Films, doing a video Q&A today. Jeff Alberts is out here training with me today, and he's got the video camera, so we figured I could be a little lazy and not actually type up a 1,500-page article. So, just want to answer your question live. Got a couple questions this month about macronutrients, and I figured I would address them both. The question one is about the timing of them, and the other is about the composition of both fat and carbohydrates and how it relates to body composition. So the first question is from Daryl, and he asks, what are the differences in the roles of fats and carbohydrate regarding body composition? So, finding the right balance in your macronutrients as far as fat and carbohydrate is very individual. The older you get, in general, you're going to see a less efficient use of carbohydrate. The younger you are, the better you're going to have a preferential partitioning of it and insulin response. The more sensitive you're going to be in the muscle cell, the more resistant you're going to be in the fat cell, and that's general. You will also see males handling carbohydrates a little better in general, but this is a very individual thing. You can have somebody my size who competes at 180 with carbohydrates as high as 300 grams sometimes coming into a show, and you can see other guys who have to get nearly ketogenic or there. In the off season in general, you're going to want to see more than your body weight in carbohydrates. And that can be as much as 2 times your body weight, depending on your activity level, your workout, your nutrient partitioning ability, and your insulin sensitivity and resistance, and where that resistance and sensitivity is, whether it's fat cells or muscle cells. So, huge difference as far as carbohydrate tolerances for different people. In general, you're going to want to have your carbohydrates as high as you can while still, meeting your goals. If that's in the off season, that's going to be having a minimal amount of body fat gain while you're getting stronger and putting on muscle. When you're dieting, that's going to be as high of carbs as you can have while still losing weight at the rate that you need it to be ready for your competition or your goal or whatever. So what do you do with the people who don't handle carbohydrates very well, but still have a decently fast metabolism? Sometimes it's better to have higher fats. This can result in a better hormonal profile, higher rates of body fat oxidation, so that they'll actually stay leaner with the same amount of calories as if their fats were a little higher and their carbs were more moderate. These guys are likely going to have lower carbohydrate diets when they diet down and keep the fats probably higher than most would suggest when you're dieting. And really the only way to know if that's you is you can go off some general trends. Like I said, if you're a woman and you're in your 40s, more than likely you're going to be on a low carbohydrate diet. That's not everybody. If you're a young male and you're highly active, you're training 4 or 5 times a week and doing cardio, you can probably keep your carbs pretty darn high. But a lot of it is going to be trial and error. So that's basically how you figure out what's the best balance between fats and carbohydrates. The next question I have is from Ryan, and he asks, I understand that you shouldn't have carbs and fat in a meal together, and that is a myth, but hitting your macros is very important, and he wants to know if it is important to have a direct source of protein in every meal. So basically, is it okay just to have carbs and fats by themselves? And he was stating that part of that he knows is a myth, like the whole idea that if you eat carbs and fat together, you just store body fat. Well, first off, I'll say that is true. Actually, if you eat a large meal of carbs and a large meal of fat at the same time, you will store body fat. However, the whole premise of looking at body fat gain or loss in small parts of the day is what needs to be addressed. And that's where the whole idea of the fat burning zone for cardio came from, and the whole idea of carb cutoffs at night. So we need to look at fat loss in the big picture. Our body doesn't have a clock, We have a schedule, and we think about things in a 24-hour sense. But really, what we need to focus on is the long-term result. So let's say you eat all your food for breakfast, and you put on, let's say, almost a full pound of fat right there. You ate all 3,500 calories that day right there. So the rest of the day, you don't have any food left. So the whole rest of the day, you're burning, So it really comes down to what happens at the end of the day. If you stored fat at 8 p.m., who cares? If you were burning fat from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., the net balance is what matters. So as far as just fat loss and fat gain goes, there's not a whole lot of importance to meal timing. However, it is a little more complicated than that when you start doing things like working out, or when you start worrying about muscle gain and muscle loss. So first let's talk about working out. When you're training, it has what's called a nutrient partitioning effect. It means that glucose will be more preferentially used in muscle tissue, and fat oxidation, not oxidation, and fat storage is going to be downregulated. So that means that after your workout and during your workout, you're more likely to be able to use the nutrients you eat for the things you want. Burning fat, putting on muscle. So it's a good idea to have a large percentage of your carbohydrates, and some would argue even your fat, around your workouts. So really the only time that the timing matters is when you're going to be active and you're going to be using the nutrients. The rest of the day it's just going to be kind of like a bank account. You withdraw, you deposit. You're going to have days, every day, whether you're dieting or bulking, you're going to have times where you're putting on fat or losing fat. Really what matters at the end of the day, the net result. So, given the importance of a workout, you should probably have somewhere between 50 to 60% of your carbohydrates between during if you have it, or post-workout. And that way you know that a good chunk of your food is going to be directed towards your bodybuilding activities. The other aspect of timing is going to be protein timing. There's been a lot of research, if you've been looking at some of the Lane Norton's information out there, that there is a maximal rate of protein synthesis that you can get from a dietary source, and it has to do with the leucine content and its interaction with the insulin response. So if you eat 80 grams of protein or say 45 grams of protein, it might be about the same. It's going to be different based on how large of a person you are, but it may be better to take your entire protein intake for the day and spread it out between 4 or 5 meals with a good 3 to 5 hours in between each than it is to say have 3 huge meals. That being said, it's hard to know how much of a difference it really will make. If you look at some of the guys doing intermittent fasting, or some of the people who have done just fine on lower numbers of meals a day and eating higher levels of protein, you probably can get away with it no problem. It just becomes a question of what's the most optimal. Another huge requirement of a high protein intake is just maintaining nitrogen balance, just so that you don't actually end up using too much protein for energy, so that you're actually losing body protein. It's pretty hard to do, especially if you're in a surplus, but when you start dieting and doing a lot of activity, it can happen. But the amount of protein you need to eat to maintain nitrogen balance, it's not as high as a lot of bodybuilders think. So, my recommendation, 4 to 6 meals a day, at least 3 to 5 hours apart. Split up your protein pretty evenly. And if you're going to have a carb-fat meal in between there, that's fine. Just make sure that the big doses of protein you have are pretty well evenly split, both in size and in timing. That's about it. Until next time, thank you very much, and this is your video blog from Eric Helms. Your video blog, it is? No, it's not a video blog. We'll just cut off and thank you very much. It's a Q&A. So. What do you think? Are you still recording? Why are you doing that?
Bloopers.
Yeah, we don't need bloopers.